Bang! Thank you for joining the Email Expert Show. The Email Marketing Show on YouTube. Ever since Friday, I've been kind of battling a bit of an infection, which is yucky right over here. It's down much smaller now, but either way, I hope to get back to doing more of these. Seems like the theme of today has been conversion. Last client I talked to, that's what we talked about. Client before that, we talked about that. Everybody wants to talk about that. And, I can't make this a long show. I know I always say that, but I really can't make this one crazy long. So I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes, but I want to share some nuggets of gold that I've discovered. Number one, we talked about exhaustively stories. It's really important. Being able to actually share, obviously the whole idea of that you prove to me that you know what I want to know, or prove to me that your product does what you say it does. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that after a while, buyers go stale, and you have to think to yourself, well, why did they go stale? And you have to think to yourself, what would it take to resell them on the dream or the vision? Well, new stories is one way for sure. But the other thing you have to think about is, who are these people? What's the life cycle? Where are they at in their buying process? So, full spectrum. One client I was talking to today, we were talking about re-engaging people who haven't bought in a long time. And so I talked about reselling the dream of what they do, and telling new stories and new ideas. I think as thought leaders, what we really do, how that process really works, what thought leadership really is, ultimately, is constantly making something that you teach, which, after you've taught it for a while, it's probably boring, not boring to the people you're talking to about it. So, when I call somebody up and I'm like, hey, you know what, so you've got this amazing list of people, and it's your job to lead those people in thought. So, I would say to those people, hey, have you thought about doing an automation for this particular purchase or that particular purchase? Or have you thought about telling them the story of how this one time, this one thing, here's a great subject line, we can tie it in with this product or this product offer or something. But you get people really excited about the possibility, and hey, one time I did this with one client and this is what happened. I bet you we can get a really similar result for you. But anyway, so back to one was re-engagement, which again, fresh takes on the same stuff is probably the first place I'd go. Just like any other news publication about a specific topic, like say the franchise newspaper has to constantly make that topic new again. Cosmopolitan's been talking about sex for 20 years, and it's always the same. There's only so much you can talk about with sex, and yet they find new headlines and new angles and new topics all the time. So they're a great example of a place to go hunt for headline ideas. Anyway, back to conversion. So then I talked to another business who's actually struggling with the front end, actually getting brand new people in. And can you believe that sometimes businesses have people on the front lines advertising for them who don't even know who the target buyer is? This morning I had a guy who we generated some sales for him, and the first thing I asked him was, what do we know about these people who bought so we can target for more people like that? And he said, well, I don't know, but let's dig into the stats and find out what we can learn. Same thing with this other fellow. I said, okay, so first questions I asked were, okay, so who's buying? What do we know about them? They have to have this and they have to have that. Okay, so here's what we have so far. We have a list of things that they have to have before they're an ideal buyer. Now, once we built that list and we knew what their pain points are and what their pleasure points are, then of course we need to go and find a whole bunch more people like that and get them on the phone. Well, in this particular business we do. And an e-commerce site obviously would be get them to the shopping cart, in front of the product, whatever. But anyway, long story short, if you don't dial in who and what the pains are and why and when they buy, and secondly, if you don't have a really compelling story, conversion is just going to be one of those elusive things where you're like, well, I don't know, I'm only getting 1% conversion or less, and we're throwing tons of money at this and it's just taking forever. Compared to, okay, we know exactly who our prospect is, we know exactly who buys this, why they buy it. You could paint a picture of them and have it be somewhat accurate to every person who buys that. Kind of looks a little bit like that, So you dial that in, and then you then you basically speak to them like as if you're speaking to one of those people, and you build something around the product or around the service that literally would speak to those kinds of people only. In fact, it would scare away anybody who wasn't that kind of person. So anyways, that's all I'm going to talk about for today, but just a little bit, a tiny bit of insight into the mindset of conversion. I mean, obviously you can look at all the copy techniques you want, but if you can't tell a compelling story, the same kind of thing you would do if you were trying to sell somebody on the phone, well, then you're probably not going to get great results.